Okay, this video is going to be about automatics, semi-automatics, and not revolvers. If you watch the other video on revolvers, you're going to know that we just talked about revolvers, how they have a cylinder. And now we have a couple semi-automatics here. And I'm going to move the revolvers out of the way. If you want to know the difference between a revolver, what a revolver is, I talk about it in my other video on revolvers. So this one's going to be about automatics or semi-automatics. Both these guns are what's called as a models in 1911. I just pulled this one out of the one of my hiding places, so let me clear it here. Alright, so we know the gun's cleared. If you look at the first video about clearing gun, how do we know an automatic's cleared? We look, there's no magazine. We can see that the magazine well is empty. This is the magazine. If there was one in there, it would look like this. But if it's out, it looks like that. So I can see there's no magazine. I visually check inside, make sure there's not a bullet in there. If I want to feel, I can actually feel it. I talked about the cons on that, but so now I know this gun is safe. Now even when I clear a gun like this, I like to chamber this gun a few times to make sure it's safe, and then I lock it back to the rear, and I know for a fact. So it's a step that you don't really need to do, but this is the biggest problem with working an automatic that people have, especially women, small hand. If you're weak, if you're a male with an injury and you've injured your wrist or your shoulder, sometimes locking the slide on an automatic can be a little difficult. I'm going to show a couple techniques as we get out there shooting more and doing some other tactical things on how to make that easy. But here's an automatic, and an automatic can be pretty much looked at by knowing it doesn't have a cylinder like a revolver, doesn't have anything that pops out, doesn't have a magazine. A semi-automatic has to have a magazine, and we'll get into rifles about internal magazines and not removable. This is technically a removable magazine. But so how does an automatic work? Well, what happens, it's still got the same basic parts as the revolver. It's got a barrel. This right here is the barrel. This is called a guide rod that's underneath there. That keeps the spring. There's a spring inside there that moves this slide back and forth and makes the slide jump forward like that. That's the spring around that guide rod. This is part of the barrel. That's where the bullet goes in. If you look down here where the magazine comes in, you're going to notice that it puts a bullet right in place. When you press in here, now that bullet, when the slide goes forward, it puts it right in the barrel. And that's basically how it works. Every time this slide comes back, it kicks out the round you just fired, and when it goes forward, it puts a new round in the chamber. I'll just put ammo over there. I should be using an empty mag. I'm gonna get some little safety range dude out here. Oh, you were unsafe. Yeah, you should never have a... Oh, be quiet. Look, you should always keep ammo away. You shouldn't be cleaning ammo, etc. But again, I just pulled this out. It was loaded, and that's the magazine I got. So, semi-automatic. This is what it looks like on the other side. You notice the barrel on this side is kind of smooth, and on this side it's got a big hole in it. Well, this is the ejection port, and that's where the bullet flies out. You got to have a hole. So if you're standing on this side of an automatic and it's shooting, guess what? The brass ain't flying that way. If you're on this side, the brass is the bullet, or they call it brass. It's basically a shell that's been fired. Is flying out so a new round can get in. When that flies out, it's hot. If it lands in your neck, it can burn. If it lands down your bra or in your shoe, it can make you do a dance. So you want to wear, appropriate clothes if you're shooting with other people. If you're shooting a gun, most of the time the brass isn't coming back on you. It's somebody else's brass that you're going to get hit with. But anytime you're on a range, you should have eye protection, ear protection, and I like a hat. If you want to wear a collared shirt or a t-shirt that kind of wraps around here so nothing can get down to the bottom. You don't want to go out there being all stylish with a bunch of open ports to where brass can get in, because an automatic's going to throw brass. Now on a revolver, when I shoot my rounds, I shoot my 6 rounds, bang, 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 bang. Then I open it, my brass goes straight down. Now I can put it in my hand, I can throw it on you and make you do a dance. That wouldn't be very nice. Might be kind of funny. But on a revolver, you don't have to worry about flying brass. So if you're on a range with a revolver, you don't have to worry about getting hit with hot brass unless somebody's throwing it on you. But if you got semi-automatics, which is pretty popular, So a lot of people call these revolvers old school. These are very reliable. They're not tension. What happens on a magazine with a semi-automatic is every time this bullet comes out, when it pushes, another one comes up top. So it drops and another one comes up. It drops and another one comes out. Well, the problem with that is what's forcing those bullets out is a spring. And when you keep these magazines loaded all the time, you compress the spring. Well, springs have gotten a lot better nowadays, so it's not really an issue. In the old days, if you left a full magazine loaded all the time, you'd fire, that spring would be so compressed it wouldn't have the flexibility to pop back out and force a round in. And that can cause you a misfire. There's other things that can cause you a misfire. So, now, on an automatic, there's a thing that's called the slide lock. How does this slide stay back? Well, the slide stays back because I've just let go of the slide lock. Now, a lot of people call that a slide release, and I'm going to get into that. And I don't like using this as a slide release. Glock, if you got a Glock, they don't like to use this as a slide release either, and I think it's a good training technique. A slide lock and a slide release is a little piece right here that when I pull this back, I push this little pin right here up, it gets in a groove and it holds that slide back. And then when I want to let the slide forward, if I pull that down, it lets it slide forward. So this little thing right here goes up and down to keep the slide back. Well, it's called a slide lock because it locks the thing to the rear. The way you let the slide go forward is you pull back and let it go. Now we're going to get into that later on large muscle groups and why I want, instead of trying to use this little bitty thumb here and going, oh, you know, this doesn't matter now when I'm thinking about it and I got all my senses, but when I'm in a shooting or a critical incident, my heart rate's up to 200 and I lose my fine motor skills, I'm not going to be able to do that. So if you train using this as a slide release, it gets you in a jam in a critical situation when you can't do it, you can't get your slide forward. But if I train to always pull back, if I train to always release and pull forward, I train large muscle groups which will work in a crisis when you're in a shooting, and it's a much better tactically sound way to let the slide go forward. So I do not call that a slide release, it is a slide lock. It locks the slide to the rear. That's it. If I use it like this, that's how people will call it a slide release, but I don't like doing that because I can release my slide by pulling back and letting it go. And I don't need to mess with that little bitty fine thing that's going to require fine motor skills in a crisis when my heart rate's up 200 miles a minute. Alrighty, so now on automatics, this is what's called, when this slide goes forward, you notice this hammer is back. We talked about the hammer on the 357 or on the 38 and the revolvers. When I squeeze this trigger, and I normally don't dry fire my 1911s, but I'll dry fire. Watch when I squeeze this trigger, this hammer's going to go. That's considered a single action pull. You cannot pull double action on this. I can pull this trigger all day because the hammer's forward, it don't work. Because this isn't what's called a double action semi-automatic. It's a single action only. The hammer has to be to the rear in order for me to fire this gun. If I carry this gun with the hammer forward, in order for me to shoot this gun, I have to either one, cock this trigger, or I have to jam that back and let it go forward and it cocks it. Because every time this slide comes back, it cocks the trigger. So here's what happens when you shoot automatic. You go, things here, it goes bang. The bullet goes off. As the bullet goes off, it creates pressure, it forces the slide back. When the slide comes back, it locks that trigger. It also kicks out the old round, it also lets the new round in. And I'll put a little attachment, there's a couple good videos on YouTube that shows the how to operation, I'll put that in the description. Make sure you always read your descriptions on my videos because I always add things that I forgot, or when I upload it I figure out, oh man, I should have covered that and I didn't, and I should have covered that. So we talked about the semi-automatic, the slide, how it's a single action. They do make double action automatics. I didn't pull one out, and I don't have time to grab it. There's one pretty close, so by the time I grab it, unload it, it'll be too late. So I'll show you that later. They make double action semi-automatics to where you can just squeeze the trigger. Most single actions, you'll notice it has a little lever there. That's called a safety. That thing goes up and down, and let me click that just to show you what a safety looks like. That's on safe, that's off safe. So, alright, we'll end that there. Now I'm gonna, the next video I'll do will be the pros and the cons between a revolver and automatic, and what the difference is, why you, if you're choosing a gun, which one you should choose, and what you're going to use it for. Alright, we'll end that there. Hope that helps. Buddy Mr. T, you're good boys.